Hello guys, and I'm gonna show you what I hope to be a successful fix on my Typhoon H, and this all derives from a crash that I had recently, for which I have footage right here. And the problem is that when it crashed, it just broke a couple of propellers, but the rubber dampers on the gimbal came off, and the cables, a couple of cables that connect the base of the gimbal with the camera, broke from the small contact board. So I just resoldered them, and I hoped that it would fix the problem, but it didn't. So I thought that the gimbal, since it has had a previous crash, might have been severely damaged internally, and I'm gonna show you here what's the problem. So once that I put the battery in and I turn on the H, let me set it up here so you can see that there's no light on the gimbal from the moment that I press the button, so there's no power at all. I've already replaced the gimbal mount, so it's not a problem about the connection in there. I even bought a new CGO3 Plus, as I thought that a replacement was in order, but it didn't fix the problem. The new CGO3 Plus doesn't work either. So what I'm gonna do now is that I'm gonna remove the camera, which has a little bit of a tight fit since I had to adapt this gimbal mount from a different camera. Now I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do. I believe I have already opened the H to check if there was another broken cable in the inside. As I told you, I've already replaced the gimbal connecting board, and there's just no power. So in the inside of the H, I saw that there's nothing else that could have been damaged except for a cable that goes right into the main power distribution board, and it's completely fine. So I believe that something might have shorted out and damaged the power distribution board. So I already have here my replacement board, which I bought from Vertigo drones, right there. And it turns out that there's not a lot of packaging. I wish that they would have packaged in a less fragile way. It's a delicate part, and it's just in a plastic bag tossed in the box. But anyway, I have my new power distribution board, and hopefully in this video I'm gonna be able to change it, to replace it and fix my problem. I don't know if I have to reprogram anything. I hope I don't, because this is just to feed power to each piece, and everything is, I believe, should work just fine. So first of all, before considering replacing the board, we have to get to the old board. So I'm gonna put this right back here. I'm gonna show you how to disassemble the Typhoon H. I also tried to look on some pictures or videos about how to do it, but there seems to be a lack of these videos. I just found one, which I will be linking below, but it's just like a general few pictures about the disassemble process. But I'm gonna show you here how it's done. For these, you're gonna need to have one set of hex keys, but it's very important that you get a metric set, because I also have here a set of standard keys, and I thought that the 1/16 of an inch in size key was the same as the 1.5. So to show you, I have here both keys, and this larger one, well, longer one, is the 1.5 millimeter, while this shorter one is the 1/16 of an inch. So I don't know if the camera is focusing right there, but they are very similar to the naked eye, but the 1/16 inch is a bit larger and it won't fit, and if you try to make it fit, you will damage your the screw heads. So it's very important that you get a 1.5 millimeter key, and also a 2mm key to remove the landing gear servo motors, or whatever they're called. So let's get started. So first of all, we're gonna remove all the hex screws that hold, oh, I'm sorry, I'm making a mistake already. First of all, we're gonna remove the battery. It's very important. Now, get the battery out of place. I'm gonna press the power button just to drain the remaining energy. That's an urban myth. I don't know if it's true, but it's being said a lot. And we're gonna open up the arms. Excuse my paper towels here. I don't have the proper towels to do this. And now we're gonna remove carefully all of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 screws with the 1.5mm hex key. Now the reason I didn't remove the landing gear first is because it's gonna be easier to remove the top cover with the landing gear up instead of just holding on the arms, which could fold and we could drop it. So now we have to very carefully pry this open like that. Now this plastic, as you may have already noted on your H, it's very, very, very fragile, or fragile, I don't know how you say it. So you have to be very careful, because you can and you will break a couple of tabs that hold it together. So it's not a big deal, because the screws will hold it in place, but it's not the best. So try not to pull too hard. Take it easy. Don't pull it, don't force it, because you can break it all together. As you can see, I'm having a bit of a hard time. You have to figure the best way to do this, where to press and where to pull. So we have now that side open. Just need to do this one. There we go. So now we remove the top cover and very carefully turn it around. We have to unplug the cable that connects to the GPS antenna. And now we're going to put it right over here. So there we go. Remove the power button. And let's see. Okay. Now we're going to remove the landing gear, but to remove it, we're going to lock the arms in place. I'm going to lock every arm, just to make sure that I can use them as support as I remove a couple of screws on each side. So for this one, we're going to use the 2mm hex key. And we're going to sit right here. Now with the arms locked in place, we can turn it completely upside down, and there's no problem because the flight controller is not touching the table. But we don't want to press very hard because we're gonna force the arms. So now we're gonna pull. I just have to remember this is the right one, the battery facing me and the frame upside down. And just as they are set here. And now the next part is we're gonna have to remove the camera mounting board, and I believe it's also the 2mm key. And now we have to remove this cable. Carefully, we're gonna pull. There we go. Here's the gimbal camera mounting board. Let's set it right here. And now the last couple of screws that are holding the bottom frame, bottom of the body, are also a couple of 1.5mm hex keys. These were very tight, so when I was first trying to remove them, I kind of felt I was stripping them just like I'm doing now. So if you can see, the key has a little ball here which allows you to angle the key while you're twisting to remove the screws, but this small ball sometimes has less surface contact, so sometimes it can easily skip and strip the screws. So I'm gonna use the flat head right here. I'm gonna be very carefully turn it so I won't damage the hex screw head. But remove it very carefully. Make sure you don't pull anything by force, or unnecessary force for that matter. And there we go. So now I'm gonna turn it around again, and I believe it's okay if we put it on its belly side. So as you can see, now everything is exposed. The only thing that concerns me is the connection of these two arms, which go under the frame of the H. But here we have the power distribution board. Now this is held by 4 screws at the top, and I believe that's all. I believe that the best thing right now is to remove these 2 arms, because I don't want to pull too much on these cables. So for that, we're gonna need the same 2mm hex key, and we're gonna try to loosen up this screw. I'm gonna fold the arm, fold this one too, and second thought, well, I'm gonna remove them anyway. How we're gonna, well, I want to make sure I'm not forcing, I'm not supporting it on any part that might break. Actually, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna stick the landing gear again back in place on the frame, just to have support like this, so nothing is pressing against the battery frame or the ultrasonic sensors, and there's no wobbling around. So I'm gonna keep removing this arm, which is in arm A on the left of the battery facing me. I'm gonna turn it all the way back. I believe it's already off, and it looks like it's not already, it's not completely loose. Where is it? Oh no, it wasn't. And gloves are a nightmare. Just pull carefully and be very careful not to lose this small washer that's on the head side of the fastening screw from the arm. Now the arm is loose. Now I'm questioning if this was the best way to do it. Now I'm gonna remove this gray cable. That's the one that powers this would be the red LED, the red LED. But since I don't have a very comfortable way to pull on that, I'm gonna take out this flathead screwdrivers and I'm gonna be very carefully pushing it up. One side at a time, perhaps using my fingernail. There we go. And off we go with the LED powering cable. And now for the motor power cables, we can pull it down and then back up. Have to be very careful doing this, even though the goal is to replace the board. But as you can see, these cables are pretty thick. And now my phone is ringing. Or not, I don't know. Very carefully pulling up these cables. And there we go. Excuse me for a minute. Okay, so now the tricky part about this is to disconnect the cables from the arm itself, because these are very, very tight. So I'm gonna think about a way to do it without damaging anything. Okay, so we're gonna pull them all the way up, and I'm gonna hold the bottom part. That's what I had my Swiss Army knife around. Okay, so now that I've removed these cables, as you can see, it was pretty tight. I don't know why this red cable was extremely tightly fastened, and you can see there's a little bit of damage on both sides. I really don't care for this side because it's part of the board that I'm trying to replace, but this one I may have to use a bit of isolating tape to protect it, because I did get a little bit off with the pliers. So now we're gonna remove altogether this arm. I'm gonna push them very carefully back out, and there's the arm assembly, and we're gonna set it right here, and we're gonna do the same for this other arm, which I have already replaced once. Well, not actually replaced, I fixed it because it broke on a crash, not this one but a previous one, and I had to repair it or pay $50 to get a new one. I repaired it for a couple of bucks and it works perfectly. So now we're gonna remove this screw as well. And now we're gonna disconnect all the remaining power cables from that feed the motors. So in order to do this, let's find a better position. Let's pull them with a little twist, and there it goes. This one is also looks like it's coming out. There we go. So that was absolutely terrifying. I damaged a couple of insulator sides from the motor. Be careful when I reassemble that. And now for the next part, we're going to disconnect each LED feed from each motor. And now almost everything is disconnected except for a couple of connections here on the sides. So I don't know if you can see, there's one in here. Oops, making a mess again. Why did I do this without taping that together? And there's another back there. One I believe is for the Wi-Fi card, and the other is, very carefully pull it one side at a time till we can get our fingernail. There you go. And actually there's another connection here which goes to the, I believe this is the GPS card or module or whatever you want to call it. I'm missing one on the side. No? Yes. This one here, I'm gonna pull it at the same time with screwdriver. I believe this one, that one was for the power button. And lastly, we're gonna pull this one out, very careful, and the one from the flight controller. So we're gonna pull that out, and now we can, I believe, remove the power distribution board. But I'm just gonna double check that everything is disconnected. There's a connection right here, but it seems that I have to remove the board first before trying to disconnect that. It's just a couple of connections there. Now I believe I can now pull carefully on this, which is the flight control module, but I want to make sure that I don't break anything. It's coming out carefully. I want to pull. I want to pull too hard and have it tossed all over the room. Carefully. This side. Okay, I think I hear some glue. Okay, I was almost bending a couple of. Now I've already seen the replacement board that I received, and it doesn't have this sort of sponge padding that this one does. So I'm gonna remove it, and hopefully I won't break it, and I will be able to reuse it. Pull it very carefully. But I don't think this is gonna work. It's just breaking apart. Well, I'll remove it altogether, and later I'm gonna see how I reinstall this or a similar padding on the new power distribution board. So now I'm gonna take a small Phillips screwdriver. I'm going to remove these 4 screws. Careful. There's one. There's the second. Excuse my pulse, but this is always something that makes me a bit nervous, considering the amount of money invested in this. And 4. So now I'm gonna very carefully, I forgot, I have to check how is this mounted on this side. So let's check that out for a minute. I don't want to break anything. It looks like we have to remove the ultrasonic sensors, which I'm gonna leave hanging in there for a while. Just see where the cable goes. I can pull it out. Okay, so there's the ultrasonic sensors from the H, and now there's also a couple of Phillips screws that go to the battery contact. So I'm gonna set it like this. This one is too large. So this one. So I need a better grip on this. Let's see. There we go. There's one. There's two. Oops. Excuse the noise from the outside. Now, the board is free from both sides. We can carefully pull it out. And there we have two more connections going on this side. The small one, it's pretty easy to remove, just like all the others we've done so far, or so it seemed. Okay. But this one seems a bit tighter somehow. I believe I've had to use a screwdriver to try and push this back and then out. Nope. Let's see how this is fit together. Whoops. I was missing a very important screw right here, which is, I believe, a ground. That's why I wasn't able to pull it all the way out. Now let's take this small screw, the others, and now we can pull this out altogether, and it will make it easier. There we go, to pull out. So there we go. This is our old power distribution board. I really don't know how it could get damaged. The camera is connected right here, but something must have shorted out. I don't know. Anyway, let me just see if I can remove this to use it again, or if I can get some similar material. It's just simple sponge. I don't know why it's there, but there's a reason for all of this to be the way it is. So let's check it out. Okay, so I was able, using a small flathead screwdriver, to very carefully scrape off the sponge, which literally is just sponge, that was glued to this bottom square on the base of the flight controller. So there's a reason it had this material. I don't know if it's just simple sponge, but I was able to recover most of it, except for the little bit that I pulled off with my fingers. And now we're ready to install the new power distribution board, which is right over here. So as I told you, I got these from Vertigo drones was around $149 if I recall correctly. I'm not sure, but anyway, I'm gonna install this right now. I'm gonna set all this away. I'm gonna put the flight controller last. I think that's a better idea, not to be meddling around with it. And well, here's the new piece, which hopefully will fix the problem that I was having with my camera. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is to try and remember exactly what I just did. So the first thing that I did was to unplug the bottom part that it seems to go to the real sense module, which I don't have. Snap it. I'm going to move this back into the camera view, hopefully, and it is right in place. Now we're gonna grab this small cable and connect it on the bottom of the power distribution board. Carefully. And there we go. Let's make sure it's firmly in place. Let's turn this around. Make sure we're not pinching any cables like this when we're trying to reinstall everything. So now we're gonna line up the screw holes like so. Now I'm gonna connect these small ground cable, which I'm gonna pull with a yet smaller screwdriver all the way to its place. I'm gonna look for a small screw. Oops, I almost dropped it. Please be very careful if you ever do this, not to lose any screw, or you'll be in a bit of a trouble. I'm gonna set it where it is. Look for these, for the thread. There we go. And screw it nice in place. I'm gonna take my flathead screwdriver just to push the lower contact that we just plugged. Make sure it's in place. Now, I believe what I should have done by now is to fasten the board with its corresponding screws. Again, I'm sorry for my pulse. Let's look for its thread. You don't want to rethread the main frame of the H. Make sure that these pink washers are where they're supposed to be. Let's look again for the thread, and just give it a small tight. Do not over tight any screw ever. Oops, on these delicate pieces. Just tighten it enough so that it won't move. Sorry about that. Just jumped a couple of turns. And there's the fourth. Now let's reconnect everything that we just disconnected. Let's hope that I remember correctly which cable goes where. So just gonna turn the motor cables to their corresponding side because they're kind of confusing me right now. And let's see. This one was connected. I'm gonna check 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this one goes here. Okay. Now there's one coming from way down here. I'm going to use my H key as a cane to pull it out and plug it nicely in place. The power button, which also comes from down here, we're going to stick it right in place like so. I'm going to connect the LED cables as well since I'm already here. These one, always the nearest one is the corresponding LED supply, which in right there. This one. Whoops. There. I'm gonna go first with the small ones, which I find it a bit harder to fit in place. This missing one right down here. Set it there. Missing a couple of LED wires, if I'm not mistaken, but they are the ones from the arms that I removed. Now, let's not forget that I removed the camera and gimbal feed, which is this one. Oh, I really, before I forget, let's set up the battery, which for some reason is twisted to one side. This one wasn't twisted. Oh no, it was actually, this one is the one that was twisted. I have to force it a little bit into that shape in order to set it back in place. I'm just gonna turn it so you can see what I'm doing right now. gonna open that up. Try to look to the right spot, which is around here, but it's gonna be harder than I expected. So I'm gonna have to put it again the same way that I did when I removed them, and try and align this while at the same time I push and screw at least a couple of turns and the screw. So I'm gonna try and do this one first. Let's push it in place. I'm gonna fold this arm up. This is pretty challenging right now. Try to give just a couple of turns. There's some glue on this side. Now we're going to do the second screw. Fold this one up, set this back in place. Let's find the thread. I don't know if it's okay. It sounds like that's the right thread. This is hard as it was to remove. So I'm sorry that you're not able to see what I'm doing. I'm just giving some turns to these screws, but it's very hard because, as you can see, the cable is very thick and it kind of wants to resist to its new position. Turns more. There we go. So as you can see, now it's completely in place. I'm just gonna double check that, because if it's not, then the battery is not going to fit in correctly, and that's a big no. Okay, so it looks like it's all right. Now, before reconnecting all the motors, I'm gonna check again. So let's put the ultrasonic sensor where it's supposed to be. So now I have to see which way does this connect, and carefully set it in place again, and very carefully push it in. And now I'm going to connect the camera and the gimbal cable. Let's check that it's going the right way, which it seems to be. There, nice and easy. Whew. And move this back here. Now to reinstall the arms, and this is the recovered B arm next to a black tip and motor. There should be a white one, and we're gonna connect these cables, and we're twisted, and then we're gonna pull them back down, because as you can remember, these were going down the arm assembly, and that different from these that show that stick all the way up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna push this down. And now, before I set, what should I do? I'm gonna set the flight controller right now. So here's my flight controller, and here's the piece of sponge that was glued on the other board, and it was glued something like this. And I'm gonna set it like the same way, just to make sure that everything's just like it was before. But the easiest way is going to be put it there. I'm missing the glue, I know, but I don't know what kind of glue they used in this, and since there's a mark from the shape of this that I'm not sure what it is, I believe it's a microcontroller, and it should hold it nicely in place. So I'm just gonna almost drop that. I'm just gonna set it back down very carefully, checking that every pin fits nicely. Turn it around and making sure that I'm not bending any pins, but this is a bit harder than I thought. Okay, now for this part, and I'm gonna hold it not to put too much stress on the landing gear until it's nicely all put together. So I'm not sure if you can see, but there's the flight controller back in place, and now the connection looks like it's right on spot. Okay. So next thing I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna test. I'm gonna set the bottom part of the H, and to do that I'm gonna open again the arms so that they would give me support and it would not support on the flight controller itself. So now I'm gonna turn it around like I did before, battery facing me, and I'm gonna remove landing gears, left and landing, oops, I'm sorry, right one. Grab the bottom part. Now you want to be careful with the antenna on this side. I'm going to slowly fit it, and remember that there's an antenna that comes out of a very small hole in that place. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take a blade and I'm going to use it just to guide the cable. Just to guide it. So okay, so now that it came out, I can pull it with my finger. LED shade in place, and goes the way around. I'm gonna set it, and we're gonna take the small ones mounting board, and for this last one we have to connect these little guys right here. Now we can turn it up again. Let's check that everything looks okay. Now we're gonna put the power button in place. We're gonna set up the GPS antenna. I'm gonna do this with my gloved hand. I'm gonna connect it right there. So here's the H back in one piece, well actually two pieces, because I want to test if this fixed the problem with the CGO3 Plus gimbal. And that sound kind of weird. So let's say that nothing cracks in an unusual manner. Oh, and I almost dropped my CGO3. Okay, so now for the moment of the truth. I'm gonna set back my CGO3 Plus. Nice in place. Battery back in place. And there you go. Look at that. Isn't that a nice sound? Of course, it's not calibrated at all. It has no memory card, but as you can see, it worked. I have now a working CGO3 Plus camera. Somehow, when the cables on the gimbal disconnected, and they must have shorted out and damaged the board. And well, I don't know if you can remember, but this is the connection. This one is the connection where that fits the camera, and somehow it was busted. So there. Now I feel like there's yet a couple of tests to make, just to make sure that everything is working okay. Let me clean up a bit, and I'll be back in a minute.